Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Red Tool House. Today, we're going to identify our maple trees in the woods. So let's get spraying. Okay, so what's the point in identifying the maple trees? Well, it's fall here at Red Tool House. The leaves are starting to change and soon they're going to be falling. And now's a good time. We obviously like to walk through the woods a lot. Now's a good time, as we're taking these strolls through the woods, to go ahead and identify our maple trees. Well, the reason why we want to identify those is for the obvious question: who likes pancakes? Who likes waffles? Do you like waffles? I thought you liked waffles.
What?
You like waffles, don't you? That's right, you were making waffles this morning, weren't you?
Pancakes.
You were making pancakes this morning. Yeah, awesome. So yes, we like to eat pancakes. So do we like high fructose corn syrup, or do we like maple syrup? We like maple syrup. Camera operator likes the high fructose corn syrup, and he's going to get a punch in the nose. No. So what we like to do is identify our maple trees. Now, for maple syrup, it's best to find sugar maple, but actually any maple tree will work, and even box elder will work for syrup. And again, people make walnut syrup and hickory syrup. There's all kinds of different things. But we're talking about maple syrup today. So we like to go through the woods and identify our maples. So a sugar maple is obviously a great thing to find. The reason why it is better than the other maples is its ratio of sugar in its sap is lower. So it takes 40 gallons of sap in a sugar maple to produce 1 gallon of maple syrup, whereas a red maple will take 60 gallons of sap to produce 1 gallon of syrup. So it's a 40-to-1 ratio compared to a 60-to-1 ratio. So as we go through the woods, Cameron there has the landscape paint there, the surveyor's paint. So I like to just come through and identify. So what are we standing in here right now? Well, this is obviously a red maple. It is the easiest way we like to look at them is the lobes on the leaves. Kelly, pull that branch down right in front of the camera there and show that. Maybe that'll focus in. There you go. So a red maple can sometimes be deceiving. It may still have 5 lobes, but the 2 lobes at the bottom, they're kind of secondary. But the easiest way to look is the leaf sawtooth? Does it have like a serrated edge? And if it has a serrated edge, then you know you've got a red maple. A sugar maple, it's best to remember the Canadian flag. The Canadian flag has the sugar maple leaf on it. And it has 5 distinct lobes, and it's smooth around. It's not serrated. And the things with the bark. The bark, to me, the bark is one of the hardest things to use to identify maple trees, because the different points in their lives, it can be smooth, it can have small furrows, it can have huge cracks, it can have huge fissures like this one behind us. Yeah, it's almost as shaggy as a shellbark or shagbark hickory. So we're going to go ahead and identify those. Even though we've got red and we've got sugar maples, we're going to identify them. And what I like to do is I'm going to have Cameron just put a big yellow dot here on the front of the tree, right here, buddy, so we can see it from the road. Back up a little bit, a little bit bigger. There you go. All right, that's good. Easy, calm down. So we'll know as we come up through the road is actually where the camera is sitting. That's where we like to walk through or drive through. So we'll be able to see, hey, there's a maple tree here. So we can walk through and identify. Let's go up here. Cameraman, follow me if you would. So we'll go to this maple tree. This is a big fella right here. And this is definitely another red maple. I can see by the leaves, very, very jagged, very sawtooth edge. Dot it there, dot boy. Get a little closer. Hold it upside down a little. You point the front of the can down a little lower. There you go. There you go. All right, that's good. Picasso. So just identifying these. So what's the point in identifying these over anything else? Again, we've got 100 acres. We could spend days, if not weeks, walking around identifying trees. But we're on the north ridge of the property. So we're on a slope. The slope is facing south. So the point of that is we want to identify the maple trees on the south-facing slope, because where we are in the northern hemisphere, in the wintertime, this is going to get the sun. So as it, come on with me here, Kim. So as winter is getting near the end, so for us that's around the end of February, maybe the 3rd week of February, winter has hit its bottom and it's actually starting to come back out of there. So the trees that are facing the southern sun, when it's the time of year where, you're right? It's the time of year where the sun is getting on the trees and the temperature at night gets below freezing, but during the day it gets above freezing. That's when that sap is really going to start flowing. It'll go back in the freeze. It'll start to rise in the warm part of the day with the sun. So we want to try to identify the maple trees on the south side of the north ridge, south facing, first, and then we can identify on the other side. If we say come across a really nice grove of sugar maple on the south ridge, north facing, we'll still identify those. And then over here, actually, if you like your syrup cherry flavored, then you can tap a cherry tree and you get cherry flavored syrup. You believe that? That's not true, actually. No. All right. Okay, so we're going to go for a hike and see what trees we can find. And again, we're on a quest for a sugar maple. Come on, gang, let's go. Let's go. You got to lift the butt of the can up in the air. There you go. Got to keep it up. Yep. Yellow. Lift the rear end up, son. All right, that's good. Well, we also like to take this time to stop and get hickory nuts. So we got a big shagbark hickory here, and then we got a shellbark hickory right behind us, and it's like standing on marbles here. Now, some of you had asked questions when we talked about acorns for chickens. Some of you had suggested, hey, why don't you let your animals in this area, instead of bringing all the nuts to the animals, why don't you bring the animals to the nuts? And I agree, that would be easier, but right now we are easily 800 yards to 1,000 yards away from my closest fence, closest pasture. We're about halfway back in our valley, so there's a lot of areas it doesn't make sense for me to try to get animals back to. It's just way too much ground to cover. I'd have to put a lot of fence in to be able to keep them here. So we take times like this to enjoy the walk in the woods and just pick up the nuts and share them with the animals or keep them for ourselves. Well, fast forward a couple days from that last scene. That evening we were able to find quite a bit of red maple. We didn't find too many sugar maple. In fact, I didn't find any that night, so I didn't record it. We did, however, get 2 5-gallon buckets full of hickory nuts. It took us less than an hour to pick those. So it's just how prolific and how well producing the trees have been around here lately. What's funny is I'm actually right here standing at a sugar maple that is about 15 yards from the house. So I do have a couple sugar maples that are here around the house, so I thought I'd at least point those out. Now, again, the best way, for me at least, to determine what's a sugar maple and what's a non-sugar maple or a red maple, because that's what we have a lot of around here, is to look at the leaves. So that's why I take this time of year to go out and identify them, and trying to get out of 100 acres, trying to get all this inventory figured out of where's what, where the red maple, where the sugar maple. So I've got this sugar maple here, and this maple is got a bit of a gangster lean to it, as you can see. Actually ran a dozer into it when I first was prepping the house site. So even though it's leaning quite badly, it still could be a good producer. It's about maybe 12 inches in diameter, so you probably get one tap out of it. So that's one that I would obviously put a dot on. Since it's right here by the house, I'm not going to spray paint a dot on. I don't want to look out of my living room window and see a big red dot on the side of this tree. Now you may be wondering, why did I choose yellow paint to spray paint the red maples and use red paint to spray paint the sugar maples? Well, that's a very good question, and I didn't even realize it till after my son pointed out. So I'll just chalk that one completely up to ignorance. So bad choice there. But again, the reason why we want to identify the sugar maple is that 40-to-1 ratio when we go to cook down maple syrup. So a gallon of sap out of this tree is going to produce more finished product than a gallon out of any of the other maples. So I'll keep looking and keep identifying trees and marking them, but already with the amount of red maple that we marked and the amount of sugar maple that I have found around the house here, and then a couple other places I know where there's sugar maple, I probably have 20 trees already identified. So later on in the year, as we get closer to February when we're going to tap the trees, then I'll do some additional episodes where we order our taps and what to look for there, and then of course document the processing, not only tapping the trees but cooking it down. So I'll look forward to that. Well, I wanted to take this opportunity, since we're talking about the leaves of the maple tree, I want to take this opportunity, came inside here, and I took these two leaves and I pressed them in a book for a couple days, because I wanted to show the difference between the two. This, of course, is the red maple. So you can see, move it up here a little bit on the, you can see here that it has 3 primary lobes. So you can see there, but it actually has some secondary lobes that some people mistake for a 5-lobe. Now, this leaf in particular, those extra little lobes aren't that pronounced. I've seen some where they extend just a little bit more, so sometimes it can be a bit deceiving. Now, this is a sugar maple. So you can see, as I mentioned earlier, the Canadian flag. You can just imagine what the Canadian flag looks like. That's the leaf that's on the Canadian flag. So the thing that I use to identify the most distinguishing characteristic, of course, besides the 5-lobe versus the 3-lobe, is the serrations. See how the red maple leaf has this almost little jagged, almost looks a little sawtooth around. Let's see if I can get that a little closer here. See if my focus can handle it. Yeah, so see the little sawtooth type elements there. Makes that a little jagged, and so you can say, well, it doesn't have a smooth edge, or it's got a sawtooth edge. Whereas the sugar maple, it has very smooth edges. So you can see as you go along, how close can I get that? As you go along the edge, you see that there's no jagged edge. So it's a 5-lobe, it's a 5-lobed leaf with smooth edges. Well, one last tip that I'll make when talking about identifying maple trees for maple syrup production, of course, is to, once you've identified your sugar maple, whether you've got a bunch or whether you've got just one, once you've identified it, make it a point to really kind of study that tree. Look at the bark. Look at the shape of the tree, the canopy. There's all these little different things that you can use to distinguish these trees at different seasons. And again, come back out in the spring, because even the seed pods that come off the sugar maple compared to the red maple are different. And obviously I don't have any to show you to give that example, but there's different times of the year that you can use different characteristics or different elements on the tree to help identify those. So identify it, find your sugar maple, find your red maple, your silver maple, all those things, and just kind of study the difference, the difference in the bark, the canopy size, all that. And that'll help you identify trees in the future, regardless of what time of year it is. Well, in the future, we're talking about maple syrup production. I also want to do a video on making your own maple syrup boiler. So you can boil down the sap, convert it into syrup. And I'll be using a 55-gallon drum. That's a project I want to work on. I haven't built one myself, but I've seen quite a few people do that. And that's a lot easier than just doing over an open fire. And you definitely don't want to do this in your house because of the amount of humidity that could build up as you cook all this sap down. So look for that in the near future. We'll get into that when we get time to put that to video. We want to just again remind everyone, if you like these videos, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up. That helps us just keep going. Visit us on redtoolhouse.com for just information on what's going on around here. If you want to sign up for our e-newsletter, then you can do that at the bottom, and we just kind of again update you with what's going on around here. So again, as we say, whether you're living in an apartment in a high-rise or you're out in 1,000 acres in the middle of nowhere, just go out and get your hands dirty. Take care.